Okay, well, good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Jack.
Ed Howley. We're talking as part of the ACSM Distinguished Leaders in Sports Medicine and Exercise Science series. I'd interviewed Ed before, and today we really want to talk a lot about the Fitness Summit and ACSM's Health and Fitness Journal, which Ed is the editor of. But before we get into that, I just wanted to quickly go back, Ed, and just tell us a little bit about your background in your graduate training and that type of thing, and then eventually become president of ACSM, and then we'll jump into this other stuff.
Yeah, I attended Manhattan College in New York City from 1961 to 65 and got BS in physical education, and was a course in my junior year in exercise physiology taught by Dr. Bob Beardsley, who got me excited about this, and that's where I began to look at graduate programs, and I think there was about a half dozen in the entire country at that time. And I was lucky enough to get a fellowship to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and it was exactly at the time, a year after Fran Nagel and Bruno Balke had come to campus, so I put myself in the lucky Eddie category.
Yeah.
And after finishing there in 1969, I went to Penn State for a year on a postdoc, and then in 1970 to the University of Tennessee, and where I retired from 3 years ago.
Went fast.
Quickly, and just about as fast as I said it.
So, when did you become involved with ACSM?
From the get-go. Bruno was president of ACSM. In fact, the second year I was out there, I think, 1966, if I recall.
That would be about the time.
And he and Fran and Carl Staderfolk, of course, were heavily involved, and they were heavily involved in the certification movement. So not only did I get to the meetings when I was a student, after being at the University of Tennessee, I got pulled into the early certification meetings that Bruno held out in Aspen, Colorado.
Yes.
And that just pulled me in a very substantial way to doing things with ACSM in terms of committee structure and working on volunteer projects. And one thing led to another, and you get on this committee and that committee, and eventually you wind up on a board and served as president. And
when did you, so you were on the board of trustees, I assume?
was on the board of trustees, yeah, and then I served as the regional chapter rep on the board, if I remember, I think. It's been so long.
Yeah, sure.
And then a vice presidential election, and first one I lost, like a lot of guys and gals. And then the second time I ran, I was elected. And then, I guess a few years, I can't remember the number, after that I was asked to run for president. And so I ran for president at that time.
What were the years you served? I didn't write it down.
I think it's, if I remember, it's 2001. That's what I remember. I don't write it down anymore.
I don't. I didn't think to write it down. But so one other question: when you're at Tennessee, then a lot of graduate students.
Yep.
I would imagine most of them got involved with ACSM.
Yeah, it was, when you think about the time frame from the 70s all the way up, there were a number of people who came up like me through the physical education side of things, and most of us were involved with both the American Alliance of Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance, the AFERD, as well as ACSM. And I think during the 70s, I gradually, systematically migrated more towards ACSM and a regional chapter that Henry Montoy was instrumental in establishing in the Southeast, and gradually diminished my involvement with the AFERD, other than getting the journal, serving on an editorial board or something. But there was, and I think that was true of the graduates. We've been lucky over the years. Hugh Welsh was at the University of Tennessee, in fact, designed a lab. I walked into a brand new building and a brand new lab because Andy Kozar had recruited Hugh from the University of Michigan, and he designed an absolutely up-to-date, brand new lab that I walked into when I went there in 1970. So lucky again.
Yeah.
And he and I worked together for years, and In the late 80s, Dave Bassett joined us, University of Wisconsin. We both had the same advisor, Fran Nagel, just about 20 years apart. And Dave has really taken on the leadership role while I was there, and certainly now. And Dixie Thompson came to us in about 1995, and she had finished her Ph.D. at the University of Virginia. And then we have biomechanics faculty as well there now, and so it's really been a fun program.
How's retirement been for you?
As busy as I need to be.
Yeah, that's what I
And
thought.
yeah, it's easy to fill a day.
Yeah. Well, Ed, I wanted to shift gears a little bit because we're in Austin at the 14th, I think, annual Fitness and Health Summit sponsored by ACSM, and I wondered if you could give us a little background of the summit itself, and,
Sure.
and in particular the journal, and how that came about, and how that's working. And
Well, Larry Golding deserves, without question, the recognition for getting the journal and the summit off the ground. He was the chair of the summit committee for 12 years. He was the editor of the journal for 8 years. And to take something that's an idea and transform that into a reality deserves recognition, and Larry deserves recognition for that. It was viewed as a package of logical activities to support an internationally recognized certification program, because we had a large number of certified, tens of thousands of certified individuals, and the annual meeting just wasn't the kind of meeting that many of these folks were going to go to. And the MSSE was not the journal that they were going to attend to. And so the leadership in the college at that point developed the idea, and of course I was on the receiving end of that about where that was going as opposed to the proposal for it, is that having a journal and having an annual meeting that really addressed clearly the needs of those in the certified who are fitness practitioners. And so the theme that underlies both the journal and the meeting is bridging the gap, translating the science to the practitioner. And that is a common theme for both the journal and the summit, and that's why it made sense to have it as a package. And it still remains that way. I mean, when we recruit speakers for the meeting, they know without question that they need to translate that to people in the audience who are going to use that information when they get back home. And so it needs to be practically driven. They have to have good takeaway messages and so on. And the journal, they're asked to deliver the same. They are actually, there's little blurbs that they need to fit in about what is the takeaway message. So what does your article mean for the individual who's out there and needs that information in order to sustain them?
Did the journal start the same year? So
same
we're
year.
Basically the 14th
That's right.
year of the journal too?
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
So they went hand, that was the package.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
And how has the, I guess I'm asking, is the readership, I mean, are you getting pretty good feedback about the way the
feedback,
journal's working?
we do surveys annually, and the feedback is positive. The numbers are not as large, and in part, and it's an issue if, like we all get MSSE. It's a part of membership.
Yeah, right.
If you want this journal, you have to pay extra for it. Unless you are part of the another membership classification, and then you get that as a part of your membership classification, which is really for non-professional members. And so if this journal were to become part of the membership package, which would jack up membership dues.
What about substituting it for MSSE, for those people?
It turns out that administratively, that's just not possible, as I understand it.
Seemed like a good idea.
As I understand it, it's not possible, because these are contracts with LWW and so on about how goods are delivered for fees and so on. But there is a real need to expand that readership. We had an editorial board meeting this morning, and the online connected piece is something that we're going to spend a lot of time with in order to get a sampling of articles, a sampling of columns they're available right now, but not a lot of people are hitting the website.
Is that on ACSM's website?
It's on LWW's, but you can get to it. You can get to, as they say, from here to there.
Yeah, I would think that would be an issue. How do you make that?
Well, that's part of what we talked about this morning. How do we get the message out? How do we simplify it so that a person can get online in a heartbeat?
Right.
And we think that if we can get this sampling, which we have up there, in the hands of other people where they can read it or download it as a PDF, columns as well as a select article, that would prompt perhaps more people taking the journal as
right. That could
an issue.
lead back to
That's
this
right.
when they say, oh,
Yeah.
gee, look what's
That's
available.
right. Yeah.
And like you said, these are the people that are out there on the firing line, so to speak.
Yep.
We need it now.
Sure.
And
But, you know, what we also hear from, and I think it's reflected in our editorial board, the people on the editorial board are faculty at universities. They want that for the students, because the students they have in class need to be aware of that content. And so the ability to get it online, the ability to have the students access that kind of information online is going to put them in contact with ACSM. And I see it as a membership recruiting tool.
yeah. Just like MSSE was
Absolutely.
years ago. with
That's right.
Students and
Certainly.
so forth. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I think it's a growth process. I think where we are right now, we've got a very active process for recruitment of feature articles that we work with 5 different subgroups. So we have a nutrition group, a physical activity group, a worksite health promotion group, and so on. And we hold teleconferences, and we talk about what has been in the journal in this category, who do we need to recruit, what are their topic areas, and then they are invited to submit. And the result is we have all the articles, frankly, covered for 2011.
Wow.
And-
I look at it regularly,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
really enjoy it.
Yeah, and it has the balance right now because we have more flexibility of how we put articles into the journal. And so to avoid overlap or overemphasis of one thing and really represent the diversity of the worksite health promotion and nutrition and physical activity and special populations or clinical. And so that's given us a little bit more lead time where we can sit back and think about doing something different.
Rather than depending on who's
Yeah,
going to send
from month
us
to month to
something.
month to month, which is where we were. And when I
That's a big
picked it off
change.
from
Yeah.
Larry, his advice to me was to focus on some mechanism that would generate that kind of response. And we spent probably about the first 6 months trying to figure out a method to do it easily without any expense. And so we have these teleconferences held generally once a year. Actually, it's going to be even a little bit less than that because we're in a swing right now where we don't need as much. But that was one of the topics this morning at the editorial board about upcoming teleconferences and the fact that we need to have the group take a look at everything that has been published plus the ones we have coming forward so that they're really brought into the process.
Yeah.
And allowed to take a look at what are the next articles that
Well,
we need.
I would think that again, people out in a health club or whatever
Sure.
probably have a collection of these
I would hope so.
and
Yep.
could refer back and,
Sure.
and make copies. I noticed there's things, sort of one-page things
That's
that
right.
they could put up on a
Absolutely.
bulletin board or
Yeah.
something like
Dixie
that.
Thompson's column and Jim Peterson's
Yeah,
column
the
are
top- what's he called?
cut and paste.
Top 10
Top
or-
10.
yeah.
Jim's the top 10
Yeah,
guy.
right.
And both columns are highly regarded. And I think that they have a basic, straightforward, focused message each time.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that resonates very well. And I've talked to some of the family practice physicians in the college who are sports medicine docs, and many of them have that in their office because it's an easy read, it has a lot of content that they think is germane to those who come and visit.
So back to the sort of the mechanical or mechanics administrative things. If they wanted to get this and they're an ACSM member, they would pay extra?
They would check off the box.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, they'd have one additional fee for that.
One of the other things I like about the journal too is the question and answer
Yep.
thing. And I wondered, is that popular too, or?
It is, and it's mandated as a part of any feature that the author has to submit appropriate CEC type questions to indicate that they, in fact, have read the article and can be awarded CEC credits. One of the recommendations that we picked up from a survey and talked about this morning is that that process needs to be put online, period, because just to simplify it. And so that was one part of the discussion, because that involves both ACSM National working with the publisher's website to
That's LWW.
Yeah, LWWs, to somehow make sure that the loop is tight, so that when the person takes the exam, it comes back and ACSM can put it into the right column for the individual who is tracking the number of Cs that they need. So, and clearly it provides a mechanism for people to obtain these credits just as a part of getting the journal.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of the fellow's name. Is it Neiman?
Oh, David Neiman.
Yeah.
Yep.
I particularly like that column.
Yep.
And I would think others would.
Yeah, David's column, he is one of the most organized people I've ever met. He's always literally the first one with a column on a due date. And he writes beautifully.
Yeah,
and I mean, you go through it, and there's nothing.
Stuff,
yeah, and there's
so practical.
I send back no comment, no edits, and
great for the editor.
It is, but that is a good example, I think, of the quality of the writing and, frankly, the fun of getting these and reading them, where they're both educational and quick.
Yeah, that's
you
what
really
I
get an update, and it is meaningful. It is got the latest references. And it is very carefully written, so that you can read through it and you don't even know you're reading through it.
Yeah.
You know, and so we're very lucky. We have a good number who write at that quality across a whole pile of areas. So we're blessed.
Easy.
Oh, without question.
6 issues a year?
6 issues a year. Some of the columns are in every issue. Jim's Take 10 is a good example of that. And Dixie's column is in every issue. Others are every other. And that's just due to page constraints, so that we can accommodate over the course of a year, we can represent more areas. So we have a certification or worksite health promotion, a business column, and by having it every other issue, we wind up being able to meet the reading interests out there of the readership.
Well, by now, at least in my opinion, you really have a good product. And I think the way we started talking earlier this morning is, now how do we get that into the hands of more people that may not even know about it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are large promotion campaigns, and but money is tight, especially to the groups that we're talking about, and especially if you talk about students. You know, where
another membership or a membership even
and
expensive.
So again, the people who are doing this, who are involved in marketing, and ACSM has got some really. This is the year of the student, Jim Pavarnik's major theme, and a number of things are being done by Heather Turner and the group with regional chapters, and part of it involves membership, but part of it involves a journal, and it's to try and get the message out to the young folks who are coming through, to identify ACSM as their organization, because they're going to be the lifeblood in the future. Yeah. There's a lot of us who are going to be going out the door, in one sense or another. And so that there's a need to focus attention on the newbies coming along, to pull them in, to identify us as the organization to belong to become a part of and involved with over time. And so I think this is money well spent. It's kind of that old pay me now or pay me later. Right. Fixing a declining membership is an issue. Trying to invest early on so you don't get to that problem is, I think, money well spent. So I really am excited about what they've got going on.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, half hour went by so fast. So thank you so much,
You're
Ed.
quite welcome.
I appreciate it
very
much.
Sure thing.
Great.